Hey guys, it's Clovis, and we're going to be doing the S6 Gran Turismo 3 Gold License test. And we're doing a tutorial for it, and let me preface this by saying that I found this to be the hardest one. The first time I got all Gold License tests in this game, S6 was actually the last one that I got. So if you're having trouble with this, don't underestimate this. Like, just because it's not S8, it doesn't mean it's easy. I find S6 actually harder than S8. I find S6 harder than S3, S4. I mean, obviously it's harder than like S1, S2. Yeah, I think that S6 for me is probably the most difficult. The only thing, maybe S3, but anyway, let's just get into the tutorial. So again, as usual, I'm going to pilot this car until I get the gold, then we're going to look at the replay with telemetry and no commentary, and then we are going to look at the replay with telemetry and I will commentate over that. So, oh man, let's give this a go. This is a tricky test. You know the corkscrew is there and you can practice that on the regular Dodge Viper. But even if you're really, really good at that, it does not make this test easy. There's actually, it's a very, very, very technical test. So, prepare yourself. You're kind of forced to drift around, but, you know, do it all smoothly. Like, already, gold is impossible. Finding the right point there is important. And now, of course, the corkscrew, we slam the brakes before we crest the hill. Turn in. Wait until the car's straight before you apply the full throttle. And I'll turn a little bit before we full throttle, once the car catches a grip. Wasn't a terrible run, but yeah, there's no way it's gold. And early on was pretty bad. Careful of the cones, they will fail you instantly. Like that last corner is actually very, very tricky, so it's better to go balls to the wall like the entire time, and then you can take that last one quite slowly. But you can see there is lots of room for improvement and lots of margin of error. So this is one of those tests where you're just going to have to compare against your Ghost until you get it. It's actually crazy, you know, how much room there is for error in this test specifically. That was kind of fun. Gave it a bit of a tap there at 2, and then got off the steering and went back on the steering again. Have to wait until the car catches grip, until you go back on the throttle there. And that was not very good. You want to use all the road there. Very important. And we entered way too wide there, so I had to slow down quite considerably. Again, it's a very tight test, and you can see what I'm doing, just trying to compare to my Ghost. Very tight test. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I do find this to be the most difficult test, but it is, at least it's a fun one, you know? It's a lot more fun than the Mazda one, I'll tell you that. But you can see, if you don't throw your car around these first few corners, your car has a very difficult time navigating them at a decent pace. Like, it's quite ridiculous if you throw your car around how much time you can save. And lose. That was good. Look at that. Look at that. You could just tell that was good. You could just tell. That's also pretty much how you're supposed to do that. And now the corkscrew, so brake at the top of the crest, or just before it, turn in, straight on the car before you go full throttle. Turn in, make sure the car catches grip. This is looking pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. I screwed it up. I tapped the brake a bit too early, the rest of that was fine, and then very careful here. I do not want to go too wide, I'd rather turn in narrowly. And now full throttle. Oh, nice. That was pretty good. That was pretty good. I'm very happy with that. Considering, like, S3 this time around took me an hour to do, like, I'm not kidding, I sat there for an hour and doing it. Getting this within 7 minutes was hectic. Alright, so that's, yeah, we're gonna save this replay. What we do, if you've seen the previous videos, or if you haven't, we look at the replay now with the telemetry and no commentary, so you can look at that for reference as much as you need to. After that, we'll go through the replay and I will talk over it. So let's save this replay and then have a look at it. Alright, so let's have a look at the replay again with commentary. You'll notice that there was a couple, like, early on, it's quite bullshit stuff that you don't actually have to do. So let's have a look at it again. Quickly again, the concept of being as risky as early as possible until you get the first few corners dead correct. I think that is the approach, because if you don't get these first corners earlier, like, very good, it doesn't matter how good you do the rest of it, you're not going to make the gold. So I don't think you should be doing exactly what I'm doing early on. You don't have to do it that way. Like, you'll see I drift out a lot. But the important thing is your pace through and at the exit of the corner is very important. And if you don't throw this car around, it's quite stiff, it's quite rigid. So you want to actually throw this car around a little bit, like, you know, the... what is it, S2? The Ford GT40 test where you kind of throw the car around. You might even want to tap the handbrake sometimes, because the best way to get your car through a corner is actually sliding through it as opposed to steering through it. So let's see how this works out. So again, you shouldn't actually be doing what I'm doing exactly. in the earlier demonstrations, you see I took the corner a bit more sensibly. What happened here is I went a bit too wide, so I tapped the handbrake to throw my car to the left. And then once I'm at this point, and I know my car is still steering to the left with my steering, I can now try to control my drift. And let me tell you, drifting in this car is a very, very, very valuable skill. I'm not the best drifter in the world, but again, if I fail this, I attempt this first corner again straight away. So whether or not I'm actually good at drifting or I manage to fluke one good drift in a run and get the gold, it does not matter. Do what you need to do and take the risks you need to get the gold. And the more risks you take early, the more time you can save later. For example, at the dip at the corkscrew, you can afford to have that extra split second of carefulness. And especially at the very last corner, taking that slowly and carefully is way, way, way better than being fancy. But you can see by drifting out there and then sticking as early as possible, we just got a lot more acceleration and pace through this little bit, and this stuff does matter a lot. Now, do you need to really touch the grass? And you don't. Okay, you do not actually need to touch the grass and throw your car out completely. However, you really should be approaching it from this left angle, and you really want to be cutting this, like, with perhaps 2 wheels over the curb. You really want to be cutting these next 2 corners up here. Just because, again, this section will carry your speed all the way until this. And here, you don't really want to slam the brakes. You kind of want to maybe tap the brake or let go of the throttle slightly to let your car stick before applying on the throttle again when the weight of the car shifts. And then you can carry that speed all the way up until here where you're forced to brake again. So making this corner right here is very important. This one is a more reliable corner I found when you're doing all this run over and over again. This corner right here is the one you'll probably get more consistently at quickly. So then after you've got good at that corner, this is the one to focus on so you can carry as much speed as possible through there. I probably took that corner a bit too careful. You notice you don't need a brake for that though. Letting go of the accelerator to turn does 2 things. First of all, it actually, well, helps you turn because your cars are being pushed forward, so your car is naturally more likely to turn. But second, when you're accelerating, the weight of your car gets pushed to the back because it's being pushed to the back, so all the weight of the car goes to the back. On the contrary, when you brake, the weight of the car shifts to the front. So what happens here when you let go of the accelerator is that the weight of the car neutralizes a bit. You get a bit more grip on the front tires, and it just helps you steer in a bit sharper than if you go through this whole thing holding down full throttle. If you full throttle through this whole corner, your front tires don't have as much grip, and that means you turn less. Your car steers less. So even a slight letting go of the accelerator during a turn like that makes a massive difference, even if you don't brake. Now again, coming up on this turn and the one after that, and maybe even at the corkscrew, pay a lot of attention to the markers. That is your guide of when you want to brake. So generally you want to brake at about the 2 mark. Or just after it. There you go. So if you could brake at the 2 mark and probably still make it. I've just done it. Braking slightly later is usually a very good way to cut time. And then you can see, if you're not careful, you will slide out. But because you're actually in 3rd gear, even if you full turn and full throttle, your car's actually going fast enough at this point to full throttle and full turn without spinning out. And then, of course, you want to be using all the road as possible and stick to this right side. You don't want to be waving around, so exiting that corner here and being on the right is perfect. I'm perfectly lined up, so I don't need to worry about, for this corner coming up before the corkscrew, this is the easiest corner in the whole track, is just holding left at the right time. I don't brake, don't even let go of the accelerator, just pay attention to the markers and when I hold left. So I hold left pretty much at the 2 mark, full throttle. And you can see I'm pretty much exactly where I want my car to be. I'm grazing the curb without touching the sand. Remember, if you touch sand, it's over. And now we get to the tricky part of the corkscrew. So unless I haven't uploaded it already, I have a corkscrew tutorial. And that'll go through the sequence of events to do this and break it down, because that test is actually slower. And even though that's not the Dodge Viper race car, it actually still is the Dodge Viper, so you can apply that stuff to this test. The corkscrew is all about you controlling your car being thrown off. The car has no balance. You have to really control it. It's different to pretty much every other turn in this game, because it's purposely designed to throw your car off. So your best action is to actually, rather than do anything super fancy, is to make sure you're at the right approach, straighten up the car before you get on the throttle, and then you can commit to it. So let's see how this looks. First of all, the braking point of this, you want to do, in this test specifically, your car's going so fast that you want to slam the brakes before you crest the hill, basically where those skid marks are. And again, remember, this is always important, but especially when you have like a big elevation change like this. Your car needs to be dead straight and balanced before you slam the brakes. Otherwise, your car is going to be thrown all over the place. So make sure... See how I'm like on the left side now? That way I've got like a straight line. So even though you can't see anything, you want to be braking at about this point so that you are you won't be too fast to turn in. So you can see how early I brake in. I brake in just before the curb. And now you can see how I'm turning in already to the left. Because what's going to happen now is I'm actually going to let go of the brake. And you can see where my car is positioned. So, no steering, no brake, no throttle. But because I turned in and let go, my car is kind of veering towards the left now. So if you were to slam the throttle right now, your car would just completely go to the left. And it would just be over. The other important thing here is you can see this road, it dips down completely, and it doesn't just dip down like, you know, in a straight line. It's dipping down like in a left turn. So, like, the wheels on the left and the right of your car are completely off. They're completely off balance to each other. So this is the #1 time to be careful. So, you see the car was veering to the left. I now steer to the right to counter steer to straighten my car up. I have to straighten my car up. I absolutely have to straighten my car up every time I do the corkscrew. You have to also straighten your car up to do the corkscrew correctly. You just have to. If you don't straighten it up and rebalance it, then once you get on the throttle, you're done. So you can see I'm waiting until I'm basically in a straight line. You can't see the curb, but it is about here. But I'm basically pointed towards where I want it to be. If I had X-ray vision to see through this track, you can see the curb here, and you're basically in a straight line to where you want to be. And you can see I'm now straightening the car up with the steering and getting back on the throttle gently. I get back on it gently. That way, I don't spin out, and I can test to see if my car is actually ready to stick. Once I'm confident that my car is balanced and accelerating, that little bit of a tap of throttle helping me through this bit. Once your car's stuck, you go full throttle, and then you react accordingly. So again, I know this is a lot of information to absorb. I know it's very technical, but there is really no way around this but doing this properly. Approaching it properly, turning in at the right time, and then reacting at the right time. Counter-steering at the right time to straighten up your car so it's pointed in this direction. And then after this, you can start to think about going full throttle, which we are kind of doing. 2/3 throttle, pretty good. Remember, at this point, especially when I just got back on the throttle, why it's so important to straighten up early is because for this bit, you actually do want to apply a bit of throttle. Applying a bit of throttle in turns like this actually is better than applying no throttle because it helps your car be pushed through the corner, which helps keeps it straight. Otherwise, your car could just lose a lot of speed and it just gets very clunky, and you're kind of at the mercy of the car veering towards one direction or the other in the track. So that little bit of throttle after you straighten up the car is crucial. And it's also crucial to actually straighten up your car before you apply the throttle to help you through the corner. So again, yes, I know it's a very, very, very technical corner, but I'm giving you as much information as possible so you can apply this stuff. And again, like, you may have a lot of error and you may go on the sand here and lose, but it's worth trying to do this corner properly until you get it. And then at this point, you can see if I don't start steering, I'm off. Like, there's nowhere to go. So once I think I need to start steering, I do. I've got through the middle part of the corkscrew. I'm now on the exit. So full throttle, steering to the right. And now you can see I slip out because that just happens at this corner because, again, it's off camber. You know, it's the hill back there. So now I'm counter steering to the left to straighten up the car. Again, you see I'm not going straight, but I actually want to be on this side of the road for the entry and exit of the next corner. I actually want to be on the right side of the road after this, but it's way too hard to exit that corkscrew corner on the right side. You see I've kind of exited in the middle, and then I go back to the right so that I'm lined up for the next corner. Like that. So in the normal corkscrew test, you actually have to kind of let go of the throttle or do something or tap the handbrake. In this test, however, you're just sharply steering left, full throttle. I let go of it slightly instinctively there. I'm not sure if I would make it or not. Again, all I really do that for is it will slightly reset the balance of the car. A very slight dip in throttle will prevent the car from being pushed too far, like the weight of the car being pushed too far to the back. And it really can give you a little bit of an edge if you just slightly let go of the throttle in a situation where you think you're going to make it. And then again, using as much road as possible, and then straight away you want to think about getting to the left side to make the next corner. This next corner is actually very important to nail. I know it doesn't seem like it, but if you really think about it, it's a quarter of the whole circuit is leading up into it and exiting it. And if you don't do it correctly, you lose like a whole second. It's actually insane. So coming up in this lap, I actually brake a little bit too early. So don't brake as early as I did. But oh man, I think this corner is basically perfect apart from that. If you see how far I'm on the left, I cut the apex, I cut the curb on the inside, and I just land on the outside curb after the corner without touching the sand. Again, I know this is way easier said than done, but ideally you want to be on the opposite side of where you're turning, cut the apex of where you're turning, and then be on the outside again. And I know that sounds strange, but it really is just a concept of using as much road as possible. So you find that relationship between accelerating and turning. If you do too much of one or the other, then, you know, either you're not accelerating enough to be fast enough, or your turning is just not enough that you're forced to slow down. So you can kind of see there what I do when I brake and then steer to the right, and then I kind of tap the acceleration. That is to throw my car into this corner. And then after this, you're kind of reacting to how your car is. So the flick ended up being perfect. Again, that just takes you trial and error until you do it, or practice until you're perfect at it. Recovering from the flick. Again, if you do that right, you can see where I landed. Now you can take the rest of this smoothly. We went balls to the wall in these early corners, threw ourselves through some of these other corners. And now at this last one, I really have no advice on how to do this corner properly, apart from do it fucking slowly. Really be careful at the end here. It is not worth a risk. It is not worth touching the curb. And I don't just mean because you're going to risk touching the cones. Even if the cones weren't there, that curb is a massive risk because it's a steep curb. You can see this is just a bit of flat curb, but the curb down here, it's like a little... If you touch that curb, your car's just going to be flown over completely. And there's no recovery from that. There is just no recovery from that. So on the outside, I'm doing this very carefully. And you can see I do not want to fuck with this curb. I really do not want to fuck with it. And then just full throttle to the end. Again, at the exit there, when you're going very slow and steering sharply, do not full throttle until you are actually pointed in the direction you want to be and your car is stable. And again, when I mean your car is stable, you probably have to counter steer and just, you know, give it a split second when your car is actually going in a straight line and then react accordingly. A lot of driving is about reacting and doing things at the right time. So take it very smoothly. Once you're approximately on the outside and your car's straight and pointed towards the straight, you can apply full throttle. Just don't apply it before your car is actually traveling in a straight line, because you will spin out, and the only recovery from that is slowing down on purpose and then probably missing the gold. And yeah, so I'm not gonna lie, again, as I said before, this was actually the hardest test for me. This is the last one that I did. But if you take risks early on, it does save you the hassle. Get the corkscrew down so that it's not intimidating anymore, and you will eventually get the gold license for S6.